Gary's Mod was a game created by our Lord and Savior Gabe Newell.
Praise be upon him.
And as someone who's played this $10 game for almost 2,000 hours, I can tell you, it is quite the amazing experience. So as I do feel qualified, I will be making the ultimate tier list for Gmod's game modes.
2021 edition.
So let's just hop on in and get right into it. So this is the tier list. It starts all the way at the bottom with admin abuse and it goes all the way to the top to S tier, baby. So what is the admin abuse tier? Well, admin abuse kills servers. So these are the games that are pretty much dead or not even worth playing. So the first game is Meme Escape, which used to go by a different name, which we shall not say. But they dodged a bullet by rebranding it under memes, so that was probably a smart decision. So why does this game find its way to the very bottom? Well, the issue isn't the amount of players on it, because you could play it as a single person. No, sir, the real reason this game finds itself at the bottom of the list is because of how it actually plays. You see, the way it works is that AI chase you around instead of actual players chasing you around. And because of that, if you try to play honestly, the AI will always find the most optimal route to catch you, so you'll never win. But when I was on the server, most players just confused and cheesed the AI by being behind walls or roofs where the AI just can't find a way to turn tight corners. The AI just couldn't find a way behind it, and these were known as God spots, and it basically turned the game into an AFK simulator. So yeah, bottom of the list. Next is the legendary Gmod Tower. Now, Gmod Tower was a social hub where you'd play a bunch of mini games, and it was super popular back in the day. So, why is it at the bottom of the list? Well, it's because it's dead. You can't find a server of this game on Gmod at all. You see, back in 2012, there wasn't enough revenue coming in for Gmod Tower, so the developmental team eventually shut it down with no intention of ever bringing back the servers. It does have a sole successor on Steam known as Towers Unite, so it's still possible to enjoy what made the game so good back in the day. That's why it finds its way to the bottom of the list. Not because it's a bad game, but because you couldn't even play it if you wanted to. Leaving the land of no return, we come to D tier. Now, D tier is where the game mode is still playable, but I just don't enjoy it as much. The first game mode in D tier is Dark RP, particularly the servers with leveling systems in them. Now, the issue with these sort of servers is just that they're too time consuming, and not in a good way. They'll have you grind out mindlessly for hours upon hours. Back then when I was a mindless kid, I would enjoy this sort of stuff, but now I just don't find it fun anymore. Next we have Discount PUBG. Just play PUBG. C tier! C tier is where we find our way to the more enjoyable games. And to start it off, we have Cinema. Cinema is a lot like a social hub, where there's a big screen and players could put up YouTube videos on it for the whole server to watch. It's alright, but there's better ways to watch videos with other people. Next up we have Serious Roleplay. It's all based around whitelisting, where you have to go to these little events that the staff set up, and if you're able to succeed in these events, you get whitelisted. Typically in these game modes, there's a lot of community around it, so you'll be talking a lot more and interacting with a lot more players, which makes it that much less mind-numbing compared to the leveling system. The last game in C tier is Stop It Slender. Stop It Slender is a game where someone plays as Slender Man and the rest of the lobby plays as the Page Finders. And the game's interesting when you got a really big lobby and Slender has to find a way to get all 24 people. But when the lobby is small, it makes the game too easy for Slender. So yeah, C tier. And next up we got that B tier, baby. Now B tier is where you can find that Baba Booey stuff. This is where some really good games rest. And getting right into it, our first game is going to be Hide and Seek. Now Hide and Seek is at the bottom of B tier for a very simple reason. There are just better versions of it higher on the tier list. Whenever I play Hide and Seek, I find it very simple. And most players tend to try to break the map or just go full AFK mode and just hold still in a really good spot. And next up we have Guess Who, which is just a better version of Hide and Seek. Guess Who introduces guns, a lot of NPCs, and power-ups to really spice up the hide and seek formula. The game is somewhat unbalanced towards the favor of the hiders because of some of the awkward stuff the AI does sometimes. But overall, really good game. Now we have Breach. Breach is based on the SCP Foundation, so you know it's going to be a very interesting game. You can start as a prisoner, a scientist, a guard, a rescue unit, or even one of the SCPs. The game could be really complicated and confusing, which is not a bad thing. I think that adds to the fun of it. But what really bogs it down is the length of the rounds. I mean, if you come to the game late or if you die early, you might as well walk your dog around the block because the next round doesn't start for at least 20 minutes. Now this is where we start getting into the more wacky game modes, starting with player versus boss. Now, players versus boss is where a whole lobby is armed with weapons such as missile launchers and grenades, and they take on a video game boss, whether it be Bowser or Shrek even, and it's definitely a game of skill. A single player could take the cake no matter if they're on the side of survivors or the boss. And that's a big thing of the game. The survivors just have to survive, whereas the boss has to kill every single player on the server. So survivors have options whether they want to kill the boss or if they just want to hide from him. Moving on, we have Cops and Runners. Cops and Runners is basically extreme tag, and if you ever are caught by the jailer, it's not the end of the game because one of your runner buddies could come and get you out of there, which makes it a very active game with little downtime for everybody. Next game is Extreme Football Throwdown. In this game, you play American football to the extreme. This game has physical violence, gang violence, melon violence. It has everything an American ball game needs. Speaking of melons, our next game is Melon Bomber. Melon Bomber plays just like Bomberman, but with online PvP, and it could get pretty hardcore sometimes, with amazing character models, a bunch of fun upgrades, and even more melons than the last game. I mean, what more could you ask for? Rounding up our B tier is Fat Kid. The goal of Fat Kid is to consume all that lies in his way. The goal of the classmates is to reach the strongest weapons at the end of the run, so that they may be able to put Fat Kid to rest. But if they're ever once caught by him, they will be turned into his brony army, and the bronies will search out and try to claim those living souls. Moving on up, we have A tier. Now A tier is where we're going to get into the real fire stuff. And to start it off, we have Trash Compactor. Now Trash Compactor is a game mode a friend pointed out to me, because as it turns out, there's only a Chinese server for the game, which really made it feel like I was downloading some sort of malware. But after getting into the game, I was pleasantly surprised. Trash Compactor is a game mode where there's a trash man up top, setting up a bunch of garbage, getting ready to throw it down at the survivors. The survivors' goal is simple, to dodge the garbage. And if they survive long enough, they get to shoot the trash man. It was actually a really fun game, and even some of the players try to communicate with kind words.
Hello, butter.
做洪水的应该是
Hello,
做这
I
个
love
的
you.
这俩应该是一个。
I love you.
Our next game is going to be Dark RP. So this is the third time RP has been in the list. So what makes this one better than the other two? So what I consider the original Dark RP is one where you could hop in and become anything you want to be, take any job you want, with nothing really preventing you from becoming said job. At most, there will be a server-wide vote to see if you want to be mayor, because you don't want someone to go full dictator on the whole city. But yeah, servers like these are kind of hard to find nowadays, but if you find one, you know it's going to be a good time. Our next game is going to be Zombie Survival. In Zombie Survival, human players want to barricade and survive against the zombie onslaught, whereas the zombie players want to turn the humans while destroying totems to make themselves stronger. All the survivors have to do is just last a couple rounds and they'll win the game. It kind of seems like a simple game, but what makes it really fun is the amount of classes both the humans and the zombies could become, which is really the spice of the game. Next up is Morbus. Now Morbus is a lot like TTT, but with aliens. And what I really like about the game is that even if you're caught or assimilated, you're still able to play. You see, the way it works is that if you're killed by the alien in its alien form, you're assimilated into the same sort of alien and you get to join it on its conquest to get the rest of the crew. And if you're ever killed by a gun, you end up becoming the alien's brute, so you're still able to run around and contribute. Moving on, we have Death Run. Now, Death Run is a parkour obstacle course sort of thing where one player plays as Death and they get to set off booby traps and stuff like that, while the rest of the players try to work together and get to the end to get Death back. It's always a good time with friends, and all the new maps that people keep making really keeps the game fresh, so it's still popular to this day. Next up is Murder. Now Murder's a really good one. One player becomes the murderer with a knife, another player starts with a gun in secret, and everyone else just tries to survive. Murder is usually best on maps where you can collect clues, and once you get 5 of these clues, you get a gun yourself. So the murderer is really encouraged to get a little more aggressive. But even then, usually people mess around in this game mode, making for some really memorable moments. The last game in our A tier is Ultimate Chimera Hunt. Ultimate Chimera Hunt is based on Mother 3, where pig masks try to turn off the chimera by clicking the big button on its back, while the chimera tries to eat them all. The game is very fast paced, and instead of feeling like a game of cat and mouse, it feels like you and your friends are really trying to wrangle this beast, while the beast tries to single each and every one of you out. Moving on up, we finally get to S tier. And S tier is where we find the real iconic stuff. And starting it off, we have Jailbreak. So Jailbreak is a game mode where the warden tries to control the prisoners, and the prisoners either choose to listen or rebel. If they listen, the group will be shortened down to a more manageable number, and then they'll play a game. And the winner of the game gets to choose what they do the next day. But if they choose to rebel, they either take over the jail or die trying. It's a really fun game mode, but if I had one complaint, sometimes players like to drag out the rounds. But that's not really the game mode's fault. In the middle of our S tier, we have Flood. Now Flood is a game mode where you have a set amount of time to make a raft out of all the props in Gmod. And once the time is up, the whole arena starts flooding with piranha-infested waters. Once the arena is filled up with water, all you have to do is destroy the other player's raft using the arsenal the game gave to you. I really enjoy how it's chill at first, but then gets really hectic when the fighting starts. Finally, our last game in S tier, Sandbox. Sandbox is a straight up playground. You could honestly do whatever you want in Sandbox, whether it's testing stuff, messing around with your friends, or just going through horror maps even. Sandbox honestly has it all, and the only thing keeping you down is your creativity. But what is this? A secret tier above S? What could it possibly be? Yes sir, we have a Lord Gabe tier, where two of Gary's Mod's best game modes lie. The first one being Prop Hunt. Now Prop Hunt consists of two teams, one of Seekers and the other one of the props. Props start out as a T-posed human that can turn into any prop on the map, while the Seekers are given an arsenal to try to scope out and kill the props. Every time a Seeker destroys something that is not a prop, they take damage. This game is so popular that even COD included it as a minigame. It got so popular that other games base themselves around this game mode. That's how good it is. It truly belongs up in the Lord Gabe tier. And yet there's another. Trouble in Terrorist Town. TTT is a game of traitors, innocents, and a detective. The innocents win if they kill all the traitors, but the traitors win if they kill all the innocents. Detective is a proven innocent with a couple gadgets that will help them along the way. This is by far my favorite game mode on Gmod, which is why it's at the very top. And for the younger viewers, just imagine Among Us with guns. Seriously though, these two game modes were the foundation that allowed Gmod to explode the way it did. So basically, B tier and up is the best Gmod has to offer, and playing any of those game modes are completely worth your time. But yeah, go ahead and screenshot it. This tier list is completely factual, as my opinion is also completely factual. Make sure to share and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.
What up, my bro-tatoes? Burger Prince here with a sick beat.
Ñoños, tier list on Gmod. Here are the servers you might want to see. Yeah, is that an error? Some missing textures. My player mod needs to take a shower, however. You better believe 100's not thing. Try 1,000 hours. What's even happening? Time for some Gmod dancing.